Apathy is a special place that only exists for those with enough time, energy, and resources to be comfortable. But we are not needed. We have no purpose. And so we think. We think about the system that feeds off our consumption. We think about modernity, the fear-mongering, the constant barrage of violence and hate, obsessions with sex, culture wars. We think about our role in the exploitation of others. We think about injustice. And the result? We numb, consuming all the pleasures that we know we are hardwired for, and that were specifically designed to keep us trapped. And when we are empty, with nothing to offer, no meaning, no desire to work, play, or create, they send us a 10% off discount coupon for the latest Sims expansion pack, supplement our need for connection with virtual companions, and then feed off the harvested data that our zombified brains no longer know how to protect. But don't get sucked in. Don't get sucked into the mind trap. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Daily Mind Trap, where my hope is that collectively we can learn about our world, develop self-awareness, and maybe even find comfort in chaos. Today I'm wondering, why do we check out? If you're new here, get strapped in. Today's exploration will take us to some weird and challenging places through our very own minds, our conscious awareness, past and present wisdom, and out the other side, hopefully with a better understanding of apathy for both you and me. Stick around if you're interested. As we understand it today, apathy is a lack of feeling, emotion, interest, or concern. It's a state of indifference. When we're apathetic, we suppress emotions like fear, excitement, motivation, and passion. We're not interested in emotional, social, spiritual, or philosophical. Basically, we have no shit left to give. Right. But the reality of experiencing apathy is much harder to define. Paradoxically, apathy is the feeling of not feeling. It's the feeling of something missing. The vagueness of this emotionless emotion blocks action. It's a state of disactivation. And so, some of us can tend to adopt apathy as an attitude, a lens through which we move through the world, indifferent, unconcerned, dispassionate, and disconnected. Some people consider feelings as weakness. Emotions are messy, ugly, and irrational. Revealing our true feelings makes us vulnerable to hurt and rejection. And acknowledging our emotions means also acknowledging our fear and shame. So obviously, we should avoid emotions at all cost. If I want to be strong, I need to be completely unburdened by feelings. Finally free from those pesky emotions, I can take on the world, beat the odds, press onwards and upwards. Maybe we should move on. Good idea. Now, I don't think this could be a self-help video on YouTube without mentioning attention and social media. I know already that many of you watching share my thoughts. We know that being on our phones and social media 24/7 is bad for us. We know it impacts our relationships. We know it exacerbates our animal impulses to compare ourselves to others. But for the sake of discussion, I'd like to briefly try to describe what might be happening in our brains when we're death scrolling. That's such a harsh term, isn't it? Consciousness refers to the subjective awareness of mental events, and we know it serves at least two functions. Number one, to monitor the self and the environment, also known as internal and external perceptions, and two, to control thought and behavior. This mechanism creates a feedback loop where one influences two and two influences one, and on and on and on. At any given time, we have the things that sit at the forefront of our conscious awareness, and we also receive information that we do not consciously acknowledge. When we monitor ourselves and the environment, we're also filtering out irrelevant information. This filtering in, filtering out process is adaptive and necessary to functioning in modern society. If we heard and focused on every voice in the room at a party, we might struggle to pay attention to Gemma bitching about her boyfriend again. As somebody with ADHD, I understand what it's like when the filtering process isn't working for me and my attention is being pulled in too many directions at once. In the wild, this ability to divide my attention might have been really useful, but in civilized society, there are a different set of rules that we have to abide by. But regardless of what time you live in, consciousness continues to do its job and filters out irrelevant information. How it determines what is irrelevant information is linked to what we discussed earlier with the feedback loop. It learns and adapts from our experiences. Have you ever walked past the same pile of laundry that needed putting away and suddenly realized that you had been ignoring it for several weeks? Or is that just me? That's part of your consciousness's job, to rule out irrelevant information in your surrounding environment. And often what's deemed irrelevant is what is most familiar to us. Primarily, our consciousness works to ensure that we are at all times safe and comfortable. When it learns what behaviors are going to provide the most safety and comfort to us, it encourages us via the feedback loop to stay right there. Now, there are lots of opinions on the topic of consciousness, and I have barely skimmed the top. But here's something interesting that I found out about meditation. Some smart people think that when we focus our attention on something that is usually in the background of our awareness, like our breathing, for instance, it allows us to shut down the normal flow of self-conscious inner dialogue, i.e., the feedback loop. With the usual goal-directed flow of consciousness disrupted, the procedures that normally direct our conscious attention are de-automatized or disrupted. Okay, so how does all of this link in with addiction to social media and apathy? I'm reminded of the last page of Huxley's The Doors to Perception, where he makes reference to a man named Carlyle and his negative perceptions of himself and the world around him. He says, "Friendship was but an incredible tradition. In such cases, your resource is to talk little, and that little mostly from the newspapers. Now, when I look back, it was a strange isolation I then lived in. The men and women around me, even speaking with me, were but figures. I had, practically, forgotten that they were alive, that they were not merely automata. To me, the universe was all void of life, of purpose, of volition, even of hostility. It was one huge, dead, immeasurable steam engine rolling on in its dead indifference to grind me limb from limb." There's something about social media that is so automatic. Our actions are automatic. Our thoughts are automatic. Our comments are automatic. Our indifference is inevitable. In 1950, US novelist John Dos Passos wrote, "Apathy is one of the characteristic responses of any living organism when it is subjected to stimuli too intense or too complicated to cope with. The cure for apathy is comprehension." The term apatheia was used by the Stoics to signify a desirable state of indifference towards events and things that lay outside of one's control. To the Stoics, to suffer a passion is to be in conflict with nature, to experience fluttering instead of the good flow of a happy person. Distress is one of the four main types of passion that the Stoics recognized. Distress is a present perceived bad. Fear is a future perceived bad. Appetite is a future perceived good. And delight or pleasure is a present perceived good. To me, distress and fear look similar to our conceptualization of depression and anxiety. Depression as a focus on the present and the past, and anxiety as a focus on the present and the future. In his seminal work, Flow, the Psychology of Optimal Experience, the author outlines that people are at their happiest when they are in a state of flow, this being a state of concentration or complete absorption with the activity at hand and the situation. It's an optimal state of intrinsic motivation, where the person is fully immersed in what they are doing. For this, we need a few things. 1, clear goals. 2, no distractions. 3, the task must be challenging. And 4, the task must be enjoyable. The author says, in a state of flow, the ego falls away, Time flies. Every action, movement, and thought follows inevitably from the previous one, like playing jazz. Your whole being is involved and you're using your skills to the utmost. If you'd like to hear more about the concept of flow, you can read this book here or you can watch this TED Talk. So apathy happens in the absence of appropriate challenge and skill, when we have no clear goals and too many distractions. But it's also somewhere that our consciousness is hardwired to stay. It's familiar and comfortable. We feed it Netflix and Facebook Marketplace because those things give us a false impression of what we really want. The flow state, but it simulates this without making us do anything for it, commit anything, take any chances, risk getting hurt or rejected. We elect to become apathy, to feed it, to hide behind it, because we can't face what's out there, because we can't face reality. Repression is not the way to virtue. When people restrain themselves out of fear, their lives are by necessity diminished. Only through freely chosen discipline can life be enjoyed and still kept within the bounds of reason. To me, comprehension means purposeful disconnection from the types of passions that restrict me to time-based, low-challenge, low-skill consciousness. Exiting this feedback loop and supplementing my life with new and challenging projects lets me experience the freedom and fulfillment of the flow state. Taoist philosopher Chuang Tzu, Nana, refers to this type of existence in the world as flowing, as purposeless wandering, characterized by detachment, forgetfulness of results, and abandonment of all hope of profit. But I can still watch TV sometimes, right? Because there's a show that I'm really into right now. But look, I'd be a hypocrite if I said I was never going to play a new game on release day or curl up with a tea and a blanket and watch a good movie every once in a while. There's so many reasons why our body needs rest. So checking out when you need to isn't a problem in itself. But when we start to slide into apathy as an attitude, start to disconnect from our relationships with other people, stop looking after our bodies, and stop feeding our minds the intellectual nutrients that encourages us to stay curious about our world and ourselves, that is when we need to have the self-awareness to be able to stop and say, is this what I want to be doing right now? Is this who I want to be? So my question to you is this: how have you experienced apathy in your life? And how, if any, was your way out? Okay, that's all I've got for you today. I hope that you can take something away from this video. Thank you so much for your time today. Please subscribe if you want to see more from the Daily Mind Trap. I'll see you next time.